Homeless man asks Big Shaq, "Can you give me $1?" Big Shaq's response is shocking. All he needed was a single dollar, his cardboard sign a testament to his hunger. Then Shaquille O'Neal walked by. What unfolded after that simple request wasn't just charity. It was something truly unbelievable. The Los Angeles afternoon sun, a familiar and often relentless companion, beat down with its usual intensity, baking the asphalt of Hollywood Boulevard and turning the air thick and shimmering. It was the kind of day that made the palm trees droop slightly and sent tourists scrambling for the shade of brightly colored umbrellas. The boulevard itself was a seething mass of humanity, a chaotic, exhilarating, and sometimes heartbreaking mix of dreamers, hustlers, starstruck visitors, and those simply trying to navigate the urban sprawl. Music blared from open storefronts, the scent of hot dogs and exhaust fumes mingled in the air, and the constant hum of conversation created a low, persistent drone. Amidst this vibrant, almost overwhelming tapestry of city life sat Marcus. His world, in that moment, was confined to a small, sun-drenched patch of pavement near the intersection of Hollywood and Highland. His meager possessions, a slightly tattered backpack, a thin, rolled-up sleeping bag, lay beside him like silent witnesses to his plight. His sign, a piece of discarded cardboard salvage from some unknown source, bore a simple, stark message scrawled in uneven marker: "Hungry, anything helps." The letters, though smudged and faded from countless encounters with the elements, spoke volumes of his current reality. Marcus was a figure of stark contrast against the glittering backdrop of Hollywood. His clothes, once perhaps unremarkable, were now worn thin, bearing the indelible creases and stains of countless days and nights spent exposed to the city's harsh realities. His hair, streaked with dust and significantly longer than he likely intended, framed a face etched with the deep lines of weariness and a quiet resignation. His eyes, however, though shadowed by fatigue, still held a faint flicker of something that hadn't been entirely extinguished, a stubborn ember of humanity that refused to be completely snuffed out by his circumstances. Hunger was a constant, gnawing presence, a dull ache in his stomach that mirrored the deeper emptiness he felt within. Isolation was another unwelcome companion, a heavy cloak that stifled any attempt at connection, whispering doubts and anxieties in the quiet moments. But perhaps the most insidious of his daily burdens was the pervasive sense of invisibility. People flowed around him like water around a stone, their eyes sliding over him, unseeing, as if he were nothing more than a blemish on the otherwise pristine facade of the boulevard. The vibrant energy of Hollywood, meant to inspire and uplift, only amplified his desolation, a constant and painful reminder of all that he lacked. Hope, once a fragile, flickering flame, had dwindled to a tiny, almost imperceptible spark, barely enough to keep the darkness at bay. He'd long since stopped expecting anything more than indifference, the occasional tossed coin a fleeting exception to the rule of being ignored. He was just on the verge of resigning himself to another day of empty hands and a grumbling stomach, the familiar sting of disappointment beginning to settle in his gut, when an unexpected shadow fell across his small corner of the sidewalk. Looking up, shielding his eyes against the sudden dimming of the harsh sunlight, Marcus found himself gazing at a pair of truly enormous sneakers, pristine white against the dusty concrete. Following the upward trajectory, his gaze met a pair of equally impressive basketball shorts, and then a black hoodie pulled up, obscuring the face of the towering figure standing before him. What happened in the next few moments would etch itself into his memory with startling clarity, an improbable encounter that felt like a scene lifted from a particularly improbable movie script. The man, whose sheer size was immediately arresting, even with his face partially hidden, shifted slightly, and then, with surprising agility for someone of his stature, crouched down, bringing his considerable frame level with Marcus. The voice, when it came, was deep and resonant, but unexpectedly gentle. "Hey man," it rumbled, a note of genuine curiosity in the tone. "How's it going?" Marcus blinked, momentarily stunned. It wasn't just the sheer improbability of the situation. The fact that it was him, undeniably him, Even without a clear view of his face, Big Shaq, a global icon whose image was plastered on billboards and television screens around the world. It was the simple, almost jarring act of acknowledgement, the direct eye contact. People, even those who might spare a cursory glance, rarely met his eyes, let alone engaged in conversation. Could be better, Marcus managed, surprised by the steadiness of his own voice. Years on the streets had taught him to be economical with his words, to conserve energy, but something about the genuine lack of pretense in the man's demeanor invited a response. Just trying to get enough for a meal. Shaq nodded slowly, his gaze lingering on the faded cardboard sign, the simple message hanging heavy in the afternoon air. He didn't reach immediately for his wallet, the predictable, almost perfunctory gesture of a passerby offering a token coin. Instead, he maintained eye contact, his expression thoughtful. "How about I do more than that?" Shaq asked, a warm, disarming smile finally breaking through, crinkling the corners of his eyes and instantly making him seem more approachable, more human. "Let's get you sorted out today." Marcus's jaw involuntarily went slack. "Are you serious?" he blurted out, the disbelief echoing in his voice, tinged with a hesitant, almost fearful hope he hadn't allowed himself to entertain in what felt like an eternity. He'd long ago learned to brace himself for polite dismissals, for the sharp sting of being ignored, for the crushing weight of indifference. This felt impossibly different, a sudden, unexpected crack in the hardened shell of his daily existence. "Dead serious," Shaq affirmed, a playful glint in his eye, as if enjoying Marcus's stunned reaction. He straightened up, his towering presence suddenly even more pronounced, casting a long shadow over Marcus, and extended a large hand, the size of which could palm a basketball with ease. "Come on, man. Let's start with some food. You like barbecue?" A hesitant but undeniable flicker of warmth ignited in Marcus's chest, chasing away some of the persistent chill that had settled there. He reached out and took Shaq's hand, the unexpected strength and firmness of the athlete's grip sending a surprising jolt of reassurance through him. His legs, stiff and protesting after hours of sitting on the unforgiving pavement, complained slightly as he stood, but the physical discomfort was quickly overshadowed by a burgeoning sense of surrealism. "Yeah," Marcus said, a genuine smile, tentative but undeniably real, touching his lips for the first time in what felt like an impossibly long time. "Yeah, I love barbecue." As they walked side by side towards a nearby barbecue restaurant, the tantalizing aroma of smoky, slow-cooked meat already permeating the air, Marcus couldn't quite shake the feeling that he was in some kind of incredibly vivid, almost unbelievable dream. He was acutely aware of the stares they were attracting, the hushed whispers that followed in their wake, the sudden flurry of cell phone cameras being discreetly raised. A flush of self-consciousness crept up his neck, a familiar wave of apprehension washing over him. "Why is everyone looking at us?" he asked, his voice barely above a murmur, laced with a nervous tremor. Shaq chuckled, a deep, booming sound that somehow managed to be both loud and surprisingly comforting. "Probably recognize me, man." He briefly pulled down his sunglasses, just for a moment, and the confirmation was immediate. A collective gasp rippled through the nearby crowd, the whispers intensifying. A fresh wave of self-consciousness washed over Marcus, intensified by the sudden recognition from those around them. Here he was undeniably disheveled, his clothes bearing the unmistakable scent of the streets, his hair unkempt, walking alongside one of the most recognizable and beloved figures on the planet. The disparity felt almost comical, a scene ripe for a late-night talk show skit, if it weren't so profoundly personal, so deeply impactful on his current reality. He instinctively glanced down at the crumpled bills and loose coins clutched in his hand, a meager sum that suddenly seemed utterly insignificant, almost pathetic in this context. He was acutely aware of the vast chasm that separated their worlds, a gulf that seemed impossible to bridge. "You really don't have to do this," Marcus said, his voice quiet, tinged with a genuine embarrassment that was almost painful. Shaq stopped walking, his large frame halting abruptly on the bustling sidewalk, and placed a reassuring hand on Marcus's shoulder, the warmth of his touch surprisingly grounding. "Man, it's just food," he said casually, But his eyes, when Marcus met his gaze, held a depth of sincerity that belied the offhand remark. Everybody deserves to eat. And trust me, he added, a hint of a knowing smile playing on his lips, a shared understanding that transcended their present circumstances. I've been hungry before. Ain't no shame in that. Marcus nodded slowly, the unexpected sincerity in Shaq's voice disarming, melting away some of the thick, protective layers of cynicism he'd accumulated over the long, hard months on the streets. The sheer normalcy with which Shaq treated him, the complete lack of condescension, despite their vastly different lives, was profoundly affecting, chipping away at the ingrained feeling of being less than, of being unworthy. He still felt a lingering sense of disbelief, a cautious hesitancy to fully embrace the moment. But the undeniable warmth of Shaq's genuine kindness was beginning to crack through the hardened shell of his skepticism. At the barbecue restaurant, the tantalizing smells intensified, the aroma of smoky ribs and slow-cooked pork making Marcus's stomach rumble audibly. Shaq ushered him inside, holding the door open with a courteous gesture, treating him not as a charity case, but as an equal, a companion. He insisted Marcus order whatever he wanted, his generosity radiating an easy, unpretentious confidence that put Marcus slightly at ease. Marcus found himself momentarily overwhelmed by the menu, the sheer abundance of choices feeling almost foreign, a stark reminder of a life he'd almost forgotten. Pulled pork dripping with sauce, ribs glistening under the warm lights, brisket smoked to tender perfection. It felt like a feast from a distant, almost mythical world, a luxury he hadn't allowed himself to even dream of for far too long. He hesitated, unsure where to even begin, the unfamiliarity of such abundance almost paralyzing. "Take your time, man," Shaq encouraged, sensing his discomfort, his voice patient and understanding. "It's all good. Pick what sounds good to you." The meal that followed transcended mere sustenance. With each bite of the savory, smoky barbecue, a warmth spread through Marcus that went far beyond the satisfying feeling of a full stomach. It was a deeper warmth, a feeling of being cared for, of being seen. He found himself talking to Shaq, tentatively at first, sharing small, hesitant details about his life, the circumstances that had led him to the streets, the slow, agonizing erosion of his hopes and dreams. Shaq listened intently, his gaze unwavering, offering nods of understanding, the occasional word of encouragement, his attention a precious gift in itself. For the first time in what felt like an eternity, Marcus felt genuinely seen, genuinely heard, genuinely valued, not as a problem to be solved or a statistic to be ignored, but as a human being with a story worth telling. This wasn't just nourishment for his body. It was a balm for his weary spirit, a potent reminder of his own forgotten humanity. The simple act of sharing a meal, treated with dignity and respect, began to chip away at the layers of despair that had clung to him for so long. The conversation flowed surprisingly easily. Shaq wasn't interrogating him, wasn't offering unsolicited advice. He simply listened, his presence a calming anchor amidst the swirling chaos of Marcus's recent past. He asked gentle, probing questions, showing genuine interest without ever being intrusive. Marcus found himself recounting the familiar story, the job loss, the dwindling savings, the slow, inexorable slide into homelessness. But this time, it felt different. He wasn't just reciting a rehearsed narrative to a social worker or a well-meaning, but ultimately detached volunteer. He was talking to another human being, someone who, despite his extraordinary success, seemed to possess a fundamental understanding of struggle, of hitting rock bottom. As Marcus spoke, Shaq would occasionally nod, offering small affirmations. "That's rough, man," or "I can only imagine." These simple phrases, uttered with sincerity, were incredibly validating. They acknowledged the pain and hardship without offering empty platitudes. He shared a few anecdotes of his own, carefully chosen moments of adversity from his own journey, not to equate their experiences, but to illustrate a shared understanding of life's unpredictable nature. He spoke of early struggles, of doubters, of moments when even he had felt the weight of the world pressing down. These small glimpses into Shaq's own humanity created a powerful connection, dissolving some of the initial awe and replacing it with a sense of shared experience, however different the scale. The aroma of the barbecue filled the air, a comforting, almost nostalgic scent. Marcus devoured his pulled pork sandwich, the tender meat melting in his mouth, the smoky sauce a symphony of flavor. It was more than just satisfying his hunger. It was a small act of reclaiming a simple pleasure, a reminder of a time when food wasn't a constant source of anxiety. Shaq, meanwhile, tackled a mountain of ribs with gusto, his large hands making quick work of the bones. There was a comfortable silence between them as they ate, a silence that spoke not of awkwardness, but of shared enjoyment and a growing sense of ease. When they were both comfortably full, the plates cleared away. Shaq leaned back in his chair, a thoughtful expression on his face. "All right, Marcus," he said, his voice taking on a slightly more purposeful tone. "The food's a good start, but we gotta do more than just fill your belly for a day, right?" Marcus nodded, a sense of anticipation building within him, tinged with a familiar cautiousness. He'd learned not to get his hopes up too high, but there was something about Shaq's genuine demeanor that made it difficult to remain completely cynical. "You ever think about getting cleaned up, man?" Shaq asked, his gaze direct but non-judgmental. "You know, a proper shower, a haircut, shave? Sometimes just feeling clean can make a world of difference." A wave of self-consciousness washed over Marcus. He instinctively ran a hand through his unkempt hair, the grease and grime a tangible reminder of his current state. It was something he thought about often, the simple luxury of feeling clean, but it also felt like an unattainable dream, a world away from the harsh realities of his daily life. "Yeah," he admitted quietly. "I think about it. Well, how about we make it happen?" Shaq said, a wide smile spreading across his face. "There's a good spa not too far from here. They do good work. What do you say?" Marcus was taken aback by the directness of the offer, the sheer simplicity of it. It wasn't a handout. It was a helping hand, extended with genuine care. He hesitated for a moment, a lifetime of ingrained caution battling with the burgeoning hope within him. "You'd really do that?" he asked, the disbelief still evident in his voice. Shaq chuckled, a warm, reassuring sound. "Why wouldn't I, man? Everyone deserves to feel good about themselves. Come on, let's go get you looking sharp." He stood up, his imposing figure casting a long shadow, but his outstretched hand was an invitation, not an order. With a mix of trepidation and excitement, Marcus took Shaq's hand once more, the strength in his grip both surprising and reassuring. As they walked out of the barbecue restaurant and back into the bustling chaos of Hollywood Boulevard, Marcus felt a shift within him, a subtle but significant change in his perception of himself and the world around him. He was no longer just an invisible man on the street. He was someone being seen, someone being cared for, someone being given a chance. And for the first time in a long time, a fragile seed of hope began to bloom in the barren landscape of his heart.